Get ready to listen, learn, and earn CE hours. This podcast features content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits.
Too many people today are doing work without understanding the importance or the connection to the bigger picture. And it's just discouraging. And so as a result, you feel like I'm not adding any value and I'm just going to disengage. And some people disengage loudly, saying, I hate this, I'm not going to stick around. And some people disengage quietly and they just stay under the radar and do as little as they have to.
Welcome back to our Building Your Credibility and Team Skills podcast series with Bridget Sarikas and Kathy Scott. I'm your host, Leanna McGuire, and today we are going to talk about changing your value equation, grit and grace living and leading. This is part of our why positive reframing is critical in healthcare leadership. So let's talk about the value equation. What are we referring to when we're talking about this value equation?
Well, I think we all need to think about what is it we have to offer the world. Well, that's our value. What is it that we bring to the table? This is usually a strength or set of strengths, and it's usually something we enjoy. But so often we don't really pay attention to that, and we're just busy trying to do what other people want us to do and meet those expectations. So this is a great time for us to reframe that conversation into what's the value that I can bring?
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's so important. The definition is fantastic, but I think it's so important to understand your value because quite often we're moving at such a fast pace that when we are involved in something, we forget to ask ourselves, how can I really add value to this situation? Here's what I bring to it, and here's what I want others to bring to it. And as leaders, it's really helpful to help bring that out. But ourselves, it's so important to understand our value.
Okay. And you're saying that value is determined by us and not someone else. Is that correct? Should be, or?
No, that's not correct.
Okay, correct me.
I think we need to be clear about what value we bring, but it's also very important to understand what value others need and desire.
I gotcha.
So who are the key stakeholders in the workplace? I mean, if you're a caregiver, what do your patients need and value? And then you've got to connect your strengths to theirs, but be really clear about that. Here's something I do well, and this is something that they need, and let them know I'm the person who can deliver this for you. So it's really a connect the dots, define it, weigh it, calibrate the value, and bring it forward.
Nice.
Well, and I think sometimes value comes from working as part of that team, right? It's not just you individually, it's what's the value of the team. What are those contributions we can make together? That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we live in this productivity model. So that's where this becomes very important. And we can talk about healthcare. We're very focused on productivity and getting to the outcomes. And when we're in that mode, we're going fast. We're going fast and furious with no time, with no reserves, and no time to think necessarily. And bad stuff happens again. And when you turn that around to a value equation, which is what does the customer need? What does the patient need? What does the team need? It's a different conversation than a productivity model. What is the cost of this service today? So to think about it that way, because then we will change, we'll change what we're doing. We'll change how we're working, and we'll start to think about our contributions in a different way.
I love that.
I do too. So it's not just outcomes, it's relationships is kind of right.
Absolutely. And it's relationships, it's the quality of our relationships, which are really important. So how do you, tune in to have quality relationships with those you work with? And it's also about your connectivity to others, the
Mm.
quantity of connection with others, because you can give and receive value through the quantity of connections, which are really important in healthcare today.
Yes.
And I think we're seeing more and more often these days that relationships do matter, that connectivity is so important, and people want to be connected in that way. So I think it's even more pronounced that we really make sure that we keep that in the forefront of our mind is building those kinds of relationships.
And what are some ways to change that traditional value equation?
Well,
Thoughts?
I think for each of us, there's many, but it starts with get clear about what's expected of me. So often, um, and there's actually a recent Gallup survey that demonstrates that the majority of employees don't even know what's expected of them today. The world has changed.
Wow.
So before you can
How sad
even,
is that?
it's
Right?
so bad. But so before you can establish, what's the value I bring to the table, you also need to understand what are the expectations here so that I can meet them or have a conversation about them. So get clear about expectations. And when we talk to teams, they're like, I don't really know why I'm here, or I'm not sure when this is due. Ask
Mm.
the question, put it on the table. Leaders, check in. So getting clear is very important.
Yeah, I also look at that as an investment, right? Invest time in each other, invest time in hearing what each other has to say. It's good to ask the questions, but then make sure that you are considered and you're responding to those questions, right? And I think that's really important.
I think it's also important for leaders in teams or otherwise to help their people feel empowered enough to speak up. Probably ties in with
Mhm.
the previous discussion we had on kindness, but I think that's an important piece as well, right?
Yeah, it does. And it's important to kind of dig below the surface. So it's the why are we doing what we're doing and why is it so important? And that interaction you had with that patient the other day, that was so powerful. Do more of that. So
Nice.
it's really getting to what's important in the workplace and having conversations about it that go well beyond productivity. Productivity is just one of so many measures that we should be talking about, but we let it dominate the conversation to the harm of many.
Yeah, I think what Kathy is talking about too, it's all about extending grace in those
I love that.
moments, right? I mean, that's really, really important.
And helping people understand their role. I mean, if that's that loud and clear, that's obviously something that needs to happen. And why am I here? Adults love rationale. We like to know why we're doing things. So I think
Right.
that's really important as well.
Yeah, when people don't know the why, they just get really cynical. I mean, I'm not a dope.
That's
Tell me the rationale for this, and if you don't know the rationale, then you better find one,
yeah,
because we all want meaning in our life. We want to do things that are purposeful and make sense. And too many people today are doing work without understanding the importance or the connection to the bigger picture. And it's just discouraging.
yeah,
And so as a result, you feel like I'm not adding any value and I'm just going to disengage.
right.
And some people disengage loudly, saying, I hate this, I'm not going to stick around. And some people disengage quietly and they just stay under the radar and do as little as they have to.
Right.
Yeah. I think that they often refer to those as those quiet quitters, right? Which is so sad. But there's also those leaders that walk down the hall and they give the same request to 3 different people just to see who can get it to them first. Talk about not adding value.
No.
And the team knows that. They all talk to each other and they find out, did you get that request? I just got that one. And so they know that there is something amiss and they're part of something that they don't like being part of. So we need to do better at that.
I liked at the beginning of this conversation how you said our value is often, it's what we bring to the table and often things that we enjoy. Can you give me an example or elaborate on that?
Yeah, when we work out of our strengths, it's generally something that we enjoy. But not always. Sometimes we're just really good at doing something we don't like that much, which is why it's important to pay attention. If I'm feeling really put out or used, what is that about? And how do I change that value equation? What is it I want to bring to the table that will provide value to me and to you? So it isn't necessarily, our strengths aren't always something we enjoy, but we should strive to work out of the strengths that we do.
Nice.
Yeah. Or bring some of that joy with you when you're doing whatever that is that doesn't necessarily give you so much joy. Find a way to do something else that you can commingle it. I think that can be a lot of fun because we spend a lot of time at work. Most of us do, and sometimes it's really, really intense. And if you can't find the value and the meaning or what you're doing, then it makes for very long days. And if you definitely have no joy, you're just miserable.
Yeah.
So you got to try to infuse it in a lot of different ways.
So when it comes to those values that we think we bring to the table or that we do enjoy, is it okay to come to your leader and say, hey, you know what? I feel like I'm really good at fill in the blank. Is there any way I could do more of that? Is that an acceptable conversation?
Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful conversation. When people come forward and volunteer a strength or want to do better, it just opens the door for all kinds of good to happen. And in today's workplace, that's so important because healthcare in particular is so complex. So we're really dependent on each other. We're interdependent in the work. And so to focus in on those relationships and bring your strengths to the team in new and different ways adds tremendous value. So those are great conversations to have with your leader and with the team.
Right.
Yeah, they're great conversations, but as a leader, you need to be open to listening to what those individuals are saying, because quite often, and I've seen this happen, it's even happened to me, I've come and said, I would really love to get involved in something. And they're like, no, you need to be right over here. They'll try to keep you in that box or doing what you're doing instead of realizing that you can probably do both. And you'll be much more creative and much more productive. So as a leader, be open-minded, listen to what your staff are telling you.
Boy, I'm so glad you brought that point up. That's brilliant. It's so important. And, it does, because we're talking about building your credibility and team skills, and building your credibility is, this would really help towards that, is to have that conversation and say, because I think sometimes people hesitate. And why would they be doing that?
They've been shut down a lot, and
there it is.
People are not comfortable speaking up in many, many organizations today, which is why we talk a lot about grit and grace and how important those are. Two sides of the leadership coin that we emphasize. So grit is having the determination to get the work done. It's sticking with it when there's obstacles in front of you and you've got to navigate around them, we need that grit to get the results, and it's really important. But the flip side of the coin, which we've been talking about today quite a bit, is really what we call grace. And grace is connecting human to human. It's caring enough to know you and to understand what value you bring to the table and what value I could offer you. And so grace, think about all the people leaving the workplace today and the high turnover and the burnout and the mental exhaustion in healthcare. Grace is connecting to the human spirit and getting to the talent to the table. And if we can't get talent to the table in healthcare and keep it there, we're going to lose.
Yeah.
We're all going to lose.
Right.
And so we've got to demonstrate both sides of that leadership or influence coin.
Yeah, and I think what's important too is quite often individuals may be all grit or they may be all grace.
Right.
You know, in some situations it may call for more grit than grace and vice versa, but overall there's a balance there. And you need to know yourself and you need to know those situations and how to exhibit, you know, one or the other at a given time. But to just be all or nothing, you know, that's never a good thing. I mean, we've all probably had individuals that have led with all grit, you know, get out of the way. That's not a lot of fun.
No, not a lot of fun at all. And when you spoke to leaders being open to people sharing their value and what they would like to bring to the table, I think that expresses that that's a lot of grace in being able to do that and allow that. And I think people being able to express their own value in the things that they enjoy, I mean, come on, it has to add to retention.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, it just, you know, somebody heard me. They want more of what I can give them. I feel important. I feel like I'm contributing. These are all retention tools that we can do if we'll just be a little bit more open, ask a few more questions, and actually listen to the conversation.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, I love the conversation about grit and grace, and I love the conversation about value. What if someone is really not sure listening to this saying, I don't know what value I bring. I don't know if I have anything. How do they find that? Just exploring?
That's sad.
Hopefully that's not the case.
I think we all need to spend more time being a little more introspective about that. And when you're going at a very fast pace all of the time, it's just impossible to figure out because you're exhausted. So how do you treat yourself with some kindness, give yourself a break, create some slack in the system that you work in for people to actually have some downtime? And create some reserve for yourself. Those are all important. And ask a friend. I mean, there's so often we can see the strengths in another person that they can't see in themselves. And what a great gift to share your observations with that person.
That's huge. I'm a fan.
Yeah. And that's a true friend who will really tell you that, right?
Yes.
You know, or you can even find a mentor, right? And a mentor is somewhere outside of your organization, someone that, you know, has values similar to your beliefs and really talk to them about, you know, what their journey was like, how they added value, how you're wanting to add value, but you just don't know how to get there. I mean, those mentoring conversations can really be powerful and can help you lead you to where you want to go on that value spectrum.
Right. And you can help mentor other people on your team for sure. Exactly. And, you know, when we talk about, we mention leaders a lot in these conversations, and someone without a title listening to this may think, well, I'm not a leader. Well, you are a leader, right? Because anybody who influences other people is considered to be a leader. You don't have to have a title. So every time we speak up and we and say, these are my values and this is what I would like to do, we have a sphere of influence where somebody else may think, well, hey, maybe I can do that too. So we're all leaders on some level if we're positively influencing other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we all influence the behavior of others. So
Yes.
just to keep that in mind, we have power simply by our actions and interactions. We can change a situation, which I love that.
Yeah.
So often we hear, well, my leader's a lunatic. I don't know that that's going to work here. And we always say, start where you are and create your own, I like Margaret Wheatley, your own island of sanity where you are. Start
Nice.
there.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
But that's really powerful if you as an individual can realize that wherever you are in an organization, you do influence, and those actions can lead to a lot of good things. A lot of positivity in how you lead and how you influence. So, I think that can be so powerful for one individual. And when you start making change, it just continues to go throughout the organization.
Fantastic. That's perfect. Great way to wrap up the last installation of our series on building your credibility and team skills, why positive reframing is critical in healthcare leadership. Today's topic was changing your value equation, grit and grace, living and leading, with Bridget Sarikas and Kathy Scott. Thank you for your expertise and input on these topics. I am Leanna McGuire for Elite Learning by Calibri Healthcare.
This podcast featured content from an accredited CE activity provided by Calibri Healthcare. Visit elitelearning.com/podcasts for accreditation and disclosure statements and instructions on how you may be able to earn CE credits. Take your learning to the next level by subscribing to more podcasts on compelling healthcare topics.